Alright, it's the Americans' turn. We're talking about infiltration. And it's looking pretty bleak, but if we look at the win conditions, they have to be at range hit 4 unpinned, non-infiltrated groups. So if we infiltrate this group, they will not win while they're still infiltrated. So let's go ahead and hide the rules. Alright. Infiltration, again, is sort of being in the other person's area. And it allows you to do close combat or hand-to-hand combat. It helps if the group you're infiltrating is pinned. So we have to decide if we want to try to shoot at them first. So first of all, who can infiltrate? Okay, they've got to be adjacent or across from at relative range 5. The only people that fits for are German Group A and American Group B. So the only two people that can infiltrate or attempt to would be Fratali here and Corporal Moores. So those are the two people who can attempt to infiltrate. Okay? This group is all unpinned, which is not good for those trying to infiltrate. So we can try to shoot at them first with a pretty weak fire attack with the hopes that somebody gets pinned. That would help. And this is sort of our last ditch. So we're going to play a fire too. Now the way that playing fire cards works with a moving group is that the fire strength of the attack is reduced by 1. Okay? So this is a 2, it would be a 1. There are other implications when you try to shoot while moving. If you have a bolt action, I think we might have talked about you have to divide the firepower by 2, round down. These are not bolt actions, so they actually have an advantage, over the bolt action to shoot while moving. We're at relative range 4, so we've got 2, 4, 6, 9, plenty to pay for that 4. Alright. We have some modifications going on, right? So it's a 2 minus 1 for movement. It's a penalty, so we're at a 1 minus 1 for smoke, because we're shooting out of smoke, puts us at a 0. And then they are moving, so that puts us back at 1. But we're shooting at them when they're coming down off a hill, so that's minus 1. So we're just going to start off at a solid 0 unless they conceal. This will be a 0. They can play a conceal card. They're going to. They want to get there, right? Alright, so instead of 0, we're at -2 starting off. So pretty weak fire attempt. But we're going to do what we can do. Let's resolve it. Okay, so -2, -1, -2, -2, -2, -2, and last one, -2, +1. So no joy on the fire attack. It's not going to help us. We are still going to try to infiltrate. Okay, because we need to stop these guys from getting in there unpinned. We need to. I forgot to discard that one from last turn, so let's go ahead and discard that. Okay, these guys took their shot. Now it's time to talk about infiltration. So first step of infiltration attempt is to make sure you can. Again, the requirements: relative range 5, across or adjacent across from you, unpinned, so that eliminates these two pinned guys. So both Fratali and Moores are going to attempt to infiltrate. So you have to decide before you start resolving this who's trying, and you can't stop even if the first guy fails. You gotta keep it going, and it counts as the action for this group for the turn. Alright, so infiltration. First step, now that we figured out who can do it, is to ask. each person has to pass a morale check. The morale check is you draw an RNC, and the RNC has to be less than your morale. So the higher your morale, the better. So for Tali to be successful, he needs to draw a 0, 1, or 2, and this is ignoring color, so no negatives here. For Moors, he also needs a 0, 1, or 2 to be successful. Now, you can skip this morale check by playing a movement card, if you have one, directly to the discard pile. So we're going to do that. Now let's see. We're going to resolve him first and him second. Let's look at their close combat values. So close combat value is what they're going to use if they're successfully infiltrating, and if we get to the next turn. He's got an 8. It's on the upper right there, CCV 8. He's got a 6. And you can calculate this, I believe, by adding morale plus weapons have certain values, and they're in a chart in the rulebook. So we might have to figure out what his is, because he has the bar instead of his machine pistol. So something else, actually, I believe when I picked up the bar, I would drop his machine pistol wherever it was. So that would have been there for somebody else to pick up if they wanted to. So, all right. But before we can close combat value, I'm just using this to help me decide who's going to get the free pass. They're same morale, so let's go ahead and just use it for Tali here. He is going to, we're going to discard our movement card. Okay. And that's going to get him past his morale check without having to actually do it. If you fail the morale check, then you are pinned and you do not successfully infiltrate. So, Tali passed his morale check. The next step, okay, for Tali here, after passing his morale check, is to resolve the infiltration attempt for this guy, okay? This is an interesting process. You use the random position numbers at the bottom of the deck, or at the bottom of a card. Before you draw the card, you can, so what happens basically is you draw, here, we'll look at this one just because it's here. See all those numbers down at the bottom? Okay, you are going to start on a column equal to, it's a little complicated, equal to the number of guys in the group. So they have 4. That's where we start, okay? So we would look at 4, and we'd look at the number under there, all right? And then we shift columns left and right depending on a number of factors. You're going to want to read the rules on this. We're only going to use a few of them here that apply, and those are the only ones that I'm really going to talk about. But smoke, movement, which we'll see a little bit of, but a bunch of things affect this. Nighttime, I would definitely recommend reading up the rules on this. But you shift columns left and right depending on these factors, and if the column you end up on after these cumulative shifts leaves you on a red number, you were successful, and you put an infiltration chit on the guy. If they end up on a black number, you weren't successful, but you don't pin or anything. You didn't successfully infiltrate. Okay? Now, before you pull this card to see if the guy is successful, you can play a concealed card. You can play a concealed card, and playing that concealed card will shift the column however many to the left. So to the left is better for the attacker. Okay, there are more red numbers to the left than to the right. So the Americans have a concealed card, and you have to make this decision. Oh, they don't. It's the Germans who have one. You have to make that decision before you draw the random position check. Okay, so we don't have to worry about that. We don't have one. So we're going to move on, and we are going to now draw the card. Okay, so again, this is for Tali. I'm going to move him up just for fun, and him, so we know who we're dealing with here. Okay, here's the card. It looks like I flipped the deck at some point, huh? I have to flip that back over. Okay, so none of this movement stuff matters. We're looking at this row on the bottom. All right. Okay, so we want a red column to be successful. All right, we're starting with 4 because that's the number of personality cards in the German group we're infiltrating. So we start on this 4C, this 4 column, okay? And then we're going to shift. Because we're coming from the woods, it makes it a little easier for us to infiltrate a group. So we're going to shift 1 to the left if you're coming from woods. And again, this is in the rule book, so we look at column 3 now. Okay. Whoops. Let's bring it back up. So we were on 4, shift to column 3, and then if you're trying to infiltrate a moving group, you shift 2 to the right. So that'd be column 4, column 5. And that's where we're going to end up. If we were moving 2, if the attacking group is moving, it'd be 2 more columns to the right, but we're going to end up again on this 5th column, which is a black 2. It's black, it means he was unsuccessful in infiltrating. So the group remains uninfiltrated. We've resolved his unsuccessful. Okay? Next, we're going to do Moore's. He has to pass the morale check because we don't have another movement card to discard. If we did, we could play it. We don't have it. So he is going to have to pass a morale check. So let's discard this. Passing that morale check again means drawing something less than his morale. So higher morale is better. So he, and this is ignoring negatives, ignoring red, R, and C's. So let's see what he pulls. He got a 0. Okay, so that's less than his morale. Okay, great. So he passed his morale check. Now we would get to decide if we want to use concealed to shift the column a little bit. Again, we don't have any, so now we're drawing the random position. And we're starting with position 4 because that's how many guys are there. So that's column 4. We're going to shift 1 to the left because we're coming from woods to column 3. And then again 2 to the right because the people we're trying to infiltrate are moving. And that gives us a black 4. So he is also unsuccessful. Not pinned, but unsuccessful. So that card goes away. He's just going to move back down here. So, all right. So that is the Americans' turn. They are going to draw up. And right now they are desperately hoping that the Germans don't have terrain to move into. So let's see what happens. We know better, right?